Assalamu alaikum. I'm out here amongst the trees to try to distinguish the background of this video from the previous one and make it a little bit more light, shall I say, lighthearted, less serious. And I'm doing this deliberately because this is about my journey to the niqab. And I'm making it really non-academic. I'm not going to read a page from the Quran, although I will mention some phrases. So we have to go back for many long years ago. Perhaps we should start when I became Muslim 34 years ago and wasn't aware of the aspect of proper Islamic covering because I was reading Quran in English, and you know, when you just read cover and so forth, it doesn't really stick to mean anything that I would think I had to cover my hair and my face. And I never did cover my hair and my face because I was in America and I didn't know any better, shall we say. And I was not in close contact with well-informed Muslims at all. And I stayed that way for 4 years on my own as a believer, reading Quran in English. And then I left and I went to Egypt. When I went to Egypt, I was blessed by Allah to meet a wonderful scholar. He was a black man from Ghana, and he was much younger than I. I was perhaps at that time, maybe let's say 38, and he was about 25. And he was probably the wisest, kindest, best overall example of a person following the Sunnah than I have ever met since, before, or since. He was really a true, I don't want to say a true believer because that sounds almost judgmental, and how would we know who is a true believer? Well, a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, and Sheikh Ismail from Ghana did it all. And I will always remember him, although I don't see him anymore. I pray to Allah that he is well. So when I first met him, it was through some mutual friends, and I'm going in because it's Friday, it's the day off. So I make things on Friday because I want the blessing of Friday. And you know, anything done on Friday is double blessing and double goodness and double everything. So here I am. It's very quiet in here and very much air conditioned because really it's very hot here. When I met him, the first thing he did was read Surah Al-Baqarah out loud among the guests. Actually, there were only 4 of us. It was the doctor and his wife and myself and the sheikh. And I didn't know what was going on. He just read Surah Al-Baqarah for like probably a good 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Now I know. Surah Al-Baqarah is supposed to get the evil out of the room. Now, not that I'm evil, or I don't think he suspected I was evil, but we do believe in some form of presence of spirits, but that's a whole nother lesson. All right, so it was right before I formally declared my Islam. And he went through the basic principles and so forth. We ended up speaking for about 3 hours in that setting and 3 hours the next day. And then I didn't see him for a long time. I returned to America for a while. We were writing back and forth. Long story short, he was the witness in my marriage to my Egyptian husband, which occurred much later when I went back again. And this is a long personal story which is not relevant. However, he was allowed by my husband, because of course you don't let anyone in the house your husband doesn't approve of, which I totally believe in that. When I first heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, how wrong to treat a woman like a child. What do you mean? It's my house too. Well, so many problems occur because of this, but that will be another lesson. This lesson is about the niqab. So he would come perhaps twice a month. He didn't live close by, and give me brief lessons on Tawheed, because I didn't know Arabic at the time and I couldn't read Arabic. But I recall that was his focus, that I should be well aware, not just because I was a convert. Obviously, I know that there's no Trinity, and that's not a correct belief, but he focused on Tawheed, and he would often give little asides. He would give little asides. He was such a lighthearted person. He didn't laugh. He would just gently smile, and he said, "Oh, you're still dipping your fingers in the mulukhiyah?" I said, "What?" Mulukhiyah is a dark green soup that Egyptians love, and it's often eaten by dipping bread in the soup. And well, he meant putting on nail polish. And he was so wise in how he approached me. In other words, almost, was that a put down? Well, if it were to be a put down, it was well placed, because, in other words, wash your hands. But he was making it light. In other words, instead of giving me this huge fiqh explanation, which I wasn't really ready for, I wasn't even aware of what fiqh really was. And I knew what he was saying, like, you don't look very nice with that, they call it manicure in Egypt, on your nails. And it is known that you're not supposed to wear nail polish because it's an incomplete wudu, which means a cleansing process of your hands. Funny enough, I met a Japanese Muslim who told me that Japanese housewives, or domestic engineers as I prefer to call them, don't wear nail polish when they're cooking, because as we know, women who have worn nail polish, it flakes off. And the husbands wouldn't stand for that in their food because it's probably really poisonous. And you can't wear any form of that if you're working in any restaurant or as any form of a cook in Japan. You know, they're very health conscious. Now you're saying, all right, where's the niqab story? It's coming. So after that first little aside about the nail polish, we were speaking about what I called at that time the head covering. I didn't know any better. And I said, well, I don't have to do that. Obviously, I'm not an Arab, and that's a traditional thing. And he said, no, you do have to wear it. And it's not a traditional thing. It's in the Quran. And I'll show you. And he did show me in the English language Quran, which was the best I could do at the time. And of course, I started to argue and not understand what the words meant in Arabic, which is the really only way. But he was patient, and he said, you're going to wear it. I said, no, Sheikh Ismail, you're telling me that I am supposed to wear a niqab, and I don't even cover my hair? Now, I'm saying this is only my first year living amongst the Egyptians. I was a Muslim for 4 years before I went to Egypt, alone, uncovered hair, but long clothes, long sleeves, wide, no tight, anything. And I said, you're trying to point out these verses to me that I'm going to wear a niqab, and I don't even cover my hair. And he said, oh, you will wear niqab when you have more knowledge. And I paused. I said, what do you mean when I have more knowledge? What's that got to do with wearing a face veil? He said, you will study and you will get the knowledge and you will wear it. And once again, I laughed heartily and said, no way. So let's move on ahead. I would say, after he told me that, it perhaps was about 6 years when I had my first Quran teacher who would come to my home, and she was Egyptian and she wore a niqab, and I really enjoyed being with her. She was a wonderful teacher, and I still see her occasionally. And I recall how gentle and what a masterful teacher she was. No pressure, not too much too soon, always being deferential, because I would argue and I would, Shaitan doesn't like it when you're learning Arabic and you're starting to be serious and memorize Quran, He doesn't like it at all. So there's onslaughts trying to make you obnoxious and imperious and downright impolite. How dare I, coming from across the sea, oh, doctora, oh. I'm like a child with these women, having no knowledge whatsoever of the truth, which is the Quran. But I still saw her as the other, she's one of them, and I'm still me. And by that time I had worn a head covering, a scarf, which I would, match with my clothing in the different colors. And I was still, I would say, the vanity, thy name is woman, someone said that. I was still in that mode, and I was still just beginning the path, let's put it that way. So about a year after I started to study, I volunteered in an Islamic orphanage, and I enjoyed that for a year. And then the woman who was running that opened up in a villa near my house a small Islamic, let's say, preschool, KG1, KG2, for the orphans, to serve them, the orphans that she was responsible for. And she asked me if I would cooperate with her and more or less be a front desk person. I haven't got the slightest idea how to deal with small children other than I love them, and I do believe it's a very worthy cause to serve the orphans. It's in the Quran. And I did that for a year, and I enjoyed it. But one day, she had gone to Saudi Arabia, and when she came back, she was giving these little gifts to everyone, her employees. And I was out at the front desk. I wasn't witness to what everyone was getting. And she came to me with a bag, a bag from a shop, a small bag. And it was one of those plastic bags. You could fit it in your purse. It was small. And she said, I want to give you this, but I don't want you to open it in front of me. And I don't really need you to respond to it in any way. I'm just telling you that I want you to keep this, and when you feel you want to open it, there's no rush. And I thought, how weird is this? What is this mystery? When I got home, of course, I opened it and found it was a niqab. And I thought, oh, that's cute. And I stuffed it in my drawer and absolutely didn't have even an inkling to take it out and try it on. It was just, I opened it and I thought, nice for her to think about me, but no. And I put it in my drawer. How many years was it later? I would say 2 years later. It was a Friday morning. And I was alone in the house. And suddenly, I had this urge to open that bag and put the niqab on. It came out of nowhere. Well, of course, it comes from Allah. Nothing comes out of nowhere. So I opened my drawer, took it out, examined it for a few minutes, and then put it on. And I said, I think I'm going to pray Friday prayer at the masjid, which was not far, like a block away from my house. There were 3 of them, a block away from my house. But I had gone to them when I first moved there, and I wasn't impressed because there were no women. This is a long time ago. Women didn't go to the masjid. The only women who went to the masjid were beggar women to stand outside the door as the prayer goers would leave, all men of course, and beg and hold out their hands and get money. So have times changed. Times have really changed. However, I recall when I first stepped outside the home, it was the most amazing, exhilarating, that's the only word I can use. It was an exhilarating feeling that here I am in the street, and I lived in a suburban area, so it wasn't really crowded, but I could see everyone, and no one could see me. And I started to walk down the street, turning my face right to left, hustle and bustle of whatever was going on Friday morning at noon. And I was a part of it, but I wasn't of it or in it. I just was an observer. And I really felt like some sort of a, this sounds ridiculous. I felt like a queen. Yes, a queen. And what does that mean, a queen? Well, I know everything you all are doing. And you don't even know who I am. Now, it might be hard for you to comprehend this, but any American woman knows you're always stared at and judged, criticized, or complimented. It's just, the woman's lot is to be observed. And then from there on in, does it mean, you know, you've won the game, or you're a loser, or you're on the path to being accepted for, let's face it, how you look. Anyway, let's jump up to a few years later. I went on with the Quran study. And when I went on with the Quran study, I had really wanted to focus on where is the proof for this? Because I knew I loved it, and I knew I was happy and satisfied. But there's so many differences of opinion. And I had asked so many women before about the proofs, and I got so many different answers. And they would point up to me in the Quran, this and that and the other. And different scholars giving fatawi, you know, juristic rulings on is it allowed or loved, or simply, let's say, a tradition from the old Arab days. Is it beneficial? Is it not? And all I know is, and I want to close with this because I don't want to keep these things too long. Sheikh Ismail had said, you will wear it when you get more knowledge. And he only told me at that time, he would not say it is obligatory. He said simply, it's what a good believing Muslim woman wears. It's her outfit. It's the outfit of the believing women. And then later, when I was able to read Arabic, I read the verse which says, say to your wives and to your daughters and to the women believers. And then it goes on by saying cover. Now that's the problematical area, which I want to make a separate one on that because that has to include some Arabic and it has to be a little bit more academic, which I said I don't want to do today. I want to make this more personal. But you question yourself, am I a believing woman or not? Do I want to be seen as a believing woman? Is that a paramount consideration that I would be known as a believing woman? Well, to me, it was to myself, not necessarily known by anyone else, because just like everything else, you get judged by the clothing that you wear. And in Egypt at that time, it was very controversial. The niqab was very controversial. And there were those who were dead set against it, and, you know, the usual, oh, terrorists, you know, just not much has changed, actually, other than the fact that it's growing. And it's growing among Muslim women in America, and it's something that you can't stop. But just let me say, in closing, it is not obligatory for every woman to cover their face, not by a long shot. Because Allah says most people don't believe in the Quran. No one can pressure you, force you, coerce you to either cover or uncover. It's solely up to you, and it's between you and Allah. If you want to please Allah and you believe that this verse means cover everything, then do it. If you're doubtful, don't do it. But remember, don't consider people when you're trying to determine to do it or not. As I told you yesterday, خاشي لله فقط. بس. Consider Allah only and study. Study more. And inshallah, Allah is going to guide you to the path that He has chosen for you. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.